So, without question, we are in a Holocaust right now that's targeting women. So, I want to talk about comparisons between the Holocaust targeting Jews in World War II and the Holocaust we're in now that is targeting women, because there's some striking similarities. Now, the biggest difference, of course, is that the Jews were a small ethno-religious minority. And with women, we're talking about more than half the human race. But nevertheless, there are similar tactics being used here. But I think because of that big difference, there was a lot of secretiveness and hiddenness in the first Holocaust. And in this one, there's so much energy in being poured into keeping what is actually happening to us off the radar. So two of the biggest mysteries in Holocaust 1, let's call it, were that the Jews throughout Europe were the intelligentsia. They were writers and artists and communicators and journalists and architects and so forth. Highly educated, highly eloquent. And as the war was progressing and 6 million Jews were being wiped out of existence in horrific ways, first tortured, they were desperately trying to get out the message to the world. This is what is happening to us. Help us. These people are monsters beyond anything. And that didn't get out. These writers and documenters and journalists desperately were trying to get out to the rest of the world what was happening to them, and that message did not get out. That was not a part of the equation. What was happening to the Jews and gays was not a part of the equation about why the rest of the world entered the war against the Nazis. It just wasn't even on the radar at all, which is insane, right? It was only after the war that this came out, and even then, there's so much just insanity around what was clearly happened that people like what's his name, Steven Spielberg, has devoted most of his wealth to just documenting Holocaust stories, to say, yeah, this happened, you idiots. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I think at this point, and this very similar thing is happening right now to women. We're desperately trying to get out the message, people like me, that there's something very different going on than what appears in our media or what we're being told. And we just can't get the message out. No one appears to be hearing what we're saying. And I think at this point, we can confidently say some technology was used against us then and is being used against, it is being used against us now, that affects our minds and affects our communication capacities. I think we can very confidently say that. The second mysterious thing that people have tried to explain through the years is how come, the Jews were active and usually huge contributors to the countries where they lived, right? As I said, journalists and builders and so forth. How come when these horrific oppressors, the Nazi armies, conquered these countries, right, and enslaved them, why were the local people so eager to turn over their Jews? Because that's what happened. And there's story after story about these Jewish families who had multitudes of friends, were contributors, had parties, and those people, those friends of theirs, turned them over as Jews to the invaders, the Nazi invaders. Only one country they didn't do that. I think it was Holland. Everywhere else. And, the way this has been explained is just they hated us, right? They hated the Jews more than they hated us more than they hated these Nazi invaders. It never really has made sense. It never really has made sense. And I think seeing how hatred against women, blindness to our suffering, deafness to our calls for help, our minds are somehow being affected in ways we cannot explain. That is off the radar. And it's similar to Holocaust 1. This is part of my proof for you for what is actually happening to us. That is being well hidden. And if you have a brain cell, I have proven this definitively. If you have any kind of ability to process reality. And so then we need to think, well, how do we respond to a war being secretively brought against us where we are being killed? Women especially. We are on the front lines. How do we respond to that?